Do not fear failure, but be terrified of regret. Failure has a bad rap. We're taught to avoid it in our schooling, through business process, through our attempts to seek perfection. And I'm going to show you how to reframe your relationship with failure so you can embrace it and learn all that this master teacher has to show us. And speaking of failing significantly, I'm glad that I have a chance to show you one of my big failures now.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
So most of us grow up measuring ourselves against others. We remember our failures with shame, embarrassment, anger, and sometimes a sense of loss or inadequacy. We don't like feeling that way. However, these moments of failure hold the seeds of our greatness. I have sat on my deathbed and felt regret for all the things I did not try. Never once did I feel happy that I had avoided failure. I regret the times that I walked away from opportunities that I felt too scared to take. Years ago, I was up in the mountains in Provo. I was in the canyon, and I was with some friends, and we were climbing up the chute to the top of the peak, and I wanted to scale the cliffs. I didn't have any ropes. I was kind of crazy. I was a young kid. I was 19, and I climbed the face of these cliffs, and I got about 600 to 800 feet up in the air, and I got stuck on an overhang. And I was hanging like this, kind of pitched back, my two hands locked in on handholds. My right foot had a place that it was locked on, and my left foot was just dangling. There was nothing that I could stand on. I could not go up. I could not go down. I didn't know what to do. And back then, my age, there were no cell phones. Nobody was going to call anybody for help. Nobody was coming to rescue me. The guys, I was close enough to the top at this point that I could hear them calling my name. Where are you? I knew I was close. I was stuck though. And I calculated in my mind what would happen if I waited. What would happen if I jumped or did something, to get out of this. And I knew that if I called for help, that these guys would have to climb back down, they'd have to get help. I was looking at a minimum of a 2-hour wait. I knew I could not hang on for 2 hours. And so as I stood there thinking about this, I was overcome with fear. And I thought, this is really, really a problem. What am I going to do? And I looked to my right, and about 6 feet away, sticking out of the face of the cliff, was a rock that was flat on the top and kind of came out in a triangle, had a bottom of it underneath. And I looked and I thought, if I could get to that rock, I could see a path up to the top of the mountain. But I was going to have to jump. And it was a long drop. If I missed this rock, it was over. I was done. And I knew it, right?
I knew it.
I also knew that if I stayed and hung on in fear, I was done. It was over. And I had a chance. And I thought to myself in that moment, if I just call for help and try to wait, and I die falling because I'm too fatigued to hang on and wait for people to come and save me, I'll be more embarrassed and regretful that I didn't try to save myself, that I didn't make this attempt. And so I settled in. I looked at what I was scared at, and I knew I had to make a choice. And I decided to jump to that rock. And I walked through the process really, really carefully. And I thought about each step of what I had to do to get to that rock. And I knew that as I jumped and I rotated to grab the rock, that my shoulder would hit the cliff wall and knock me away from the cliff. So I knew I had to rotate at the last second. I knew I had to jump far enough. I wanted to grab the rock with my whole body because I had jumped to things before, leaping, and what happens sometimes when your body hits it is you bounce off and you lose your grip. It's very difficult to make a jump and grab something. So I knew I had a slim chance is how I felt. But I decided to go for it. And I leapt. I'm going to let you in on a secret. I actually made it. That's why I'm here. But I leapt And as I rotated, my shoulder hit the wall and it knocked me away from the cliff, farther than I expected. And I reached and I grabbed this rock and I was hanging underneath it, swaying, looking down between my legs, 600, 800 feet. And I felt like I hadn't seen Mission Impossible at this point because it wasn't out, but it felt like a Mission Impossible moment to me, where I was hanging by the tips of my fingers on this rock. And I pulled myself up and I climbed to the top of that cliff and met my friends, where I collapsed, overcome with fear and shaking and trembling. But man, I was glad I had made that leap, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't. And I did not regret that. Now, I've sat on my deathbed before, and I have thought about the things that I regret, and this is common. We do not regret the things that we have done. We regret the things we never did. Don't be the person that's hanging on to something on a face of a cliff, saying to yourself, hey man, I've just got this, I'm gonna wait and see if I survive. That is a sure fall to your death. I'm not talking about physical death necessarily, but I'm talking about your emotional and well-being, the death of the good feelings that you have in you. You got to learn to walk into fear, to embrace it, to overcome, because that is the place where you will really, really thrive. This is how you do it. First of all, you have to recognize your emotional state. Most people avoid this. You have to recognize you are trapped. You're facing something that you want to overcome, but you're not doing it. The second thing is you change the narrative and you lock into a different mentality and you get into your own safe place. You have to realize that this is something that you're going to do. Let go of the fear. Drop it to the ground. Face what it is you want to face. Then consider what it is you truly want and desire. Do you want this? Is this a desire that is strong enough to get you to walk through that wall of fear? And I promise you, as I was hanging on that cliff and looking at that jump that I had to make, it was a wall of fear that I did not necessarily want to break, but I really wanted a chance to live. And it was the only way I could see doing it. And it gave me that strength to be like, I want this. I'm going to do this. Do you want what you're chasing? Do you really want it? Or is it just kind of like, it'd be fun. If it's that, you won't do it. You got to want it. And then once you consider that it's something you truly want and desire, just to reiterate, I moved into point 3, which is to consider what you truly want to desire without mentioning it. That's what we're on right now. And once you have that locked in, you commit. You absolutely commit. You cannot do this without committing. Because if you don't, you'll mess up. And I'll give you another example of this. And this is why I knew when I leaped, I knew I had to commit. When I was a kid, I was trying to learn how to do backflips on my trampoline. I think I was like, 10. And I hadn't learned how to do a backflip yet. And I was on my trampoline, I wanted to learn, and I knew the theory behind it, I knew what was required, but I was really scared. And I could jump really high, I could do front flips all day, and I was standing at one end of the, we had a big round trampoline, I was standing at one end, I'm jumping, I'm getting really high, and then I went for my backflip, and I was so nervous, I didn't really rotate because I was worried about breaking my neck, and I launched backwards like this, and my head went between the springs on the other side of the trampoline, and I flopped over and landed on the concrete pavement that our trampoline was on. Below, a little banged up, but I was okay, but I easily could have broken my neck by hitting that bar, right? I remember thinking, wow, that was crazy. I didn't commit, and instead of rotating, I just kind of shot backwards in an arc. So I got my head around it. I committed. I was like, I know what to do. I'm going to tuck, I'm going to flip. And the next time I tried, I went up, I tucked, I rotated tight, I came down, and I landed right on my head in the middle of the trampoline. And I was fine. I was in a tucked position. Didn't hurt myself. And then I realized if I stay tucked, I can make this rotation. I did it again, and I landed my backflip. Took commitment, took my willingness to commit to get through. Without the commitment, I was guaranteed to fail. So when you follow that step, it unleashes you. And what I will say about failure is that on the edge of failure, living in that space is the place where you'll find your greatest space of creativity, innovation, adaptability, and excitement. There's a story that my mom would tell me as a kid growing up of the Pony Express. And there was a man trying to hire a new driver for the stagecoach that was going to take the mail across the country. And he asked the men, as a test of their abilities, to drive the stagecoach up this canyon road that had a sheer cliff falling off the edge into the valley below. And he asked them to drive as close to the edge as possible to see how good they were. The first driver drove up. He was about, this far away, maybe a foot off the edge. It was really impressive. The next guy, he drove, and his wheel was like sometimes hanging off the edge. Amazing driver. The last guy drove, and he drove up right next to the wall. Far away from the edge as possible. When he came back, the guy said, well, you weren't close to the wall at all. I'm not going to hire you. And the guy says, well, I will never fall off the edge, and I will always deliver your mail because I will stay as far away from the edge as possible. Now, my mom used this as a story of how to live my life. Stay away from the edge. Don't fall into sin. Don't do things that are bad because that's death. What I'd like to say to you is this is a great analogy for how to deliver mail. It is not a great analogy for how to live a life. You need to live your life on the very edge of the cliff. You want to walk on that space where failure is imminent, because when you're in that space, that is where you will find your greatest creativity. That is where you will find the drive to live, the excitement, and the anticipation of what is coming. You will unleash yourself when you move to the edge, when you commit and you succeed. Live a little. That is the power of fear. Fear is the ignition that allows you to see all these things when you're willing to face it, walk through it, have a desire to achieve something, and you commit. I have another video for you about fear. Did you know that fear is a trauma response? And I can teach you how to metabolize fear and change it. So check that out if you like. If you want to hang out with me more, click on my link in the description. You'll find me there. We can chat. Hey, I'm James the Fear Guy. Thanks for hanging out. Here comes that next video.